Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Success. Before we dive into this week's episode with none other than Mr. Chris Skinner, I have a bit of an announcement to make. Our next few episodes are sponsored by LexisNexis Risk Solutions. For those of you who may be au fait with LexisNexis, Risk Solutions is a growing part of their business. They provide AML, KYC, and risk solution products and services to banks, to fintechs, to insurance companies, and to enterprises. We've got to know their team really well here in South Africa. They were a US business, but have been growing across the continent for a number of years. So if you are looking at new solutions, you want some risk assessments done, I certainly recommend getting in touch with the guys over at LexisNexis Risk Solutions. The links are in the bottom here. And again, a big thank you to the team there for their sponsorship. Without further ado, let's go and hear what Chris has to say. Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Success. We've had some really fascinating people on this year. Since we've gone video, since we've gone live, and the YouTube channel has gone crazy, which is thanks to all of our guests and you, our listeners as well. And today I'm joined by someone who I had the pleasure of meeting. Sorry, I should have turned that off. I had the pleasure of meeting about 6 years ago, I think it was, Chris, and it was in Cape Town, and you were MC at an event. I think it was Finovate, if I'm not mistaken. It was sort of my early days into the world of sort of fintech, and Chris was MC, and he stood on stage and he gave this opening talk about the future of banking and the digital transformation, and I thought, wow, this guy clearly knows his stuff. And then I think it was the second day, about 11, 12 o'clock, Chris and one of the event organisers came up to me and said, listen, Chris has got to be somewhere and he needs to change his flight and he's got to go to the airport. So are you okay just to stand in for him? And there was me going, well, I'll try. Anyway, Chris, to be fair, you weren't going to lose your job. It was bloody awful. I was terrible. It was literally my first kind of MC gig, and I thought, you know what, I need to practice some more. Anyway, I've been a fan of Chris ever since. And sorry, I haven't actually introduced you. It's Mr. Chris Skinner, everyone. If you don't know who Mr. Chris Skinner is, then clearly you're not in the world of fintech or banking or digital transformation. Chris is a renowned author. An industry legend. If I don't, not blowing too much smoke, Chris. Here, please stop me. And I've tried very hard to grow our subscriber base, and I don't want them going, "Oh, this guy's just full of trash."
I'm enjoying the gushing. Carry on. Keep gushing, Darren. It's fine.
Yeah, Chris has won numerous awards, and after we met, it was about 2 years later. I bumped into him again. This time in Amsterdam, of all places, and it was off the back of the Money 2020 summit, and it was actually on the sub side of it, which was the European Women in Payments Network, EWPN, run by a fantastic group of ladies across Europe. And I thought I was going to be the only guy in the room, and there is Chris sitting in the corner with a room full of, or a table full of ladies, and clearly enjoying life. So that was kind of where we had another shared interest. So I was invited there as part of the sort of African delegation because of my work with the African Women in Fintech and Payments. And Chris was obviously there wearing his EWPN hat. And then we started talking. And we actually released, I released a blog. I don't know if you remember this, Chris, right? This is probably 4 or 5 years ago, before COVID. And it was entitled Fintech Needs More Men, right? Now, the barrage of, do you remember that one? The barrage of abuse I got for that because people obviously didn't read the content and just looked at the title. Don't get me wrong, clickbait 101, it was brilliant. It worked fantastically well. But the message behind that was not Fintech needs more men, it's Fintech needs more male allies, right? And that's really what I wanted to talk some parts of this conversation there with Chris about. It's a very important topic. And yeah, that's kind of a bit of a prelude to what we can discuss today. So Chris, welcome. I know you've got many hats that you've worn. You've been in the industry for many years. You've won many accolades.
You didn't mention the 17 business books that I've written and the 5 children's books.
Literally out of my mouth. The children's books is a really interesting one. I will come back onto that, I promise. As are the 17 banking books, of course. All right.
You should.
But Clearly, I've missed some other things, Chris. Despite the accent, you're not based in London or in the UK. You're based in a rather cold place in Poland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Okay.
global, to be honest, but my main base is just outside London and just outside Warsaw. My wife is Polish, so we moved here some years ago because we've
Okay.
got two little boys, and we wanted them to be near their grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins. And so we've now been here five
Wow.
years. It was meant to
Okay.
be two.
Enjoying life there? I mean, I imagine it's quite different from London. I've never been to Warsaw, but I imagine it's quite different.
It's actually, in some ways, a lot better because I think Britain is a bit of a basket case post Brexit, and particularly, when you've seen Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and the whole disarray of the country, and the non-stop debate in Britain is about really negative things like getting rid of migrants,
Yeah.
etc., and sending them to Rwanda. It's depressing. The country is not what it was. So I'm not bashing Britain, but in Poland, probably because I don't watch the news because I don't speak Polish. I tried for 6 months during the pandemic lockdown and failed miserably because every word has a Z in it, or a J and a K, all the things on a Scrabble board you get the highest points for. In fact, I can't even pronounce the street I live on. It sounds like I'm Tommy Cooper because it's Precision. But basically, yeah, what I like about the country is it's very new, very vibrant. A lot of the systems were implemented post the Berlin Wall and Iron Curtain coming down. So hugely competitive retail banking marketplace, all of them with pretty new systems and new ideas and fantastic infrastructure. So if it was a competition, I'd say if Poland could speak English, I'd feel it was the best country in the world. And a lot of Polish
Agreed.
people
Yeah,
do speak
absolutely.
English, so
And one thing, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into anything else, Chris speaks his mind. He's a commentator and a true commentator, so he's not afraid of sort of calling out anyone or any company or anything like that. He is independent. He doesn't work for any of these businesses, and he's not afraid to call out these sort of organisations or countries or governments. So I'm sure we'll cover that a little bit later. Anyway, Chris, before we get on to the sort of gender diversity stuff, because I really want to talk about that. I know obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge and you speak all the time about digital banking and the future of banking. And I promise we will touch on that. But before we do that, you have been quite busy recently and you've just finished something. What have you been busy doing and what have you just finished and what's coming in sort of mid next year?
yeah. Well, I'm flying around
Okay.
again quite a lot, going to conferences, networking, and speaking. But over the last couple of years, I, every 2 years I produce a new banking business book, which is why there's 17 and there's about to be the 18th delivered in this Q2 2024. And it was interesting because the book started as the idea of decentralized versus centralized money and the whole nature of central bank digital currencies versus stable coins versus cryptocurrencies and where that would pan out. And that's a huge debate in itself. But then halfway through ChatGPT, OpenAI, Bard, everything started happening with
Yeah.
generative artificial intelligence. And if you integrate the two concepts, decentralized or centralized financial services with artificial intelligence, then it ended up getting into a discussion around what I call intelligent money, which is where money thinks for us. We don't have to think about it anymore. It's embedded, invisible, intelligent, and everywhere. And when you start looking at that concept, of course, there are things that are implications around this in terms of how you look at money in your lifestyle. And the whole idea of it is that if money is intelligent, then it'll understand your lifestyle and it will tell you when you're doing stupid things, doing good things. It's going to be smart, it's going to be contextual, it's going to be highly personalized. It's like saying at the moment, I still get really annoyed with my bank because they're traditional banks who give me statements that just say a transaction and no reference or
Yeah.
understanding of who the hell it came from. Whereas intelligent money would not only tell you who and where it came from, but why, at what time, what you were doing, maybe what you were actually buying, why you bought it. It could give you all that
Which
intelligence.
is what some of the challenger banks that are sort of app based first are doing. I know here in South Africa we've got Discovery Bank who do that exceptionally well. They really, really do. And they're able to segment. I think Revolut do this as well, and they're able to sort of segment what you're sort of spending on, whether it's retail, whether it's food, or whether it's whatever, cinema tickets, and they're able to categorize that. But this is taking it a next step.
Yeah, but as you say that sounds like personal financial management, which is what we were doing
Yeah,
10 years ago. And the challenger banks do that really well. But I'm saying we're going to go well beyond that, which is um, actually getting to the stage where you could almost integrate emotion into money, in terms of giving you everything you need to know about everything you do, embedded, invisible, and everywhere. But you probably won't want that for buying a cappuccino in a local
yeah.
cafe, but you would want that for um, when you start to see um, lifestyle events. So I, I've talked a lot recently about the Bank of the Future being a lifestyle manager, and the whole idea of that is that when you get a job, get made redundant, have a birth or have a death, etc., etc., a package of APIs that integrates all that together through your trusted financial provider and gives you complete contextual management of that life event, with all of the things that go around it. And that starts getting interesting. I mean, the challenger banks are doing this, but some traditional banks are, in that Royal Bank of Canada and Nordea in the Nordic region have both been talking about this idea of integrating APIs for life events. And so the example that was given by Nordea, which I remember quite well, is that you crash your car, but your bank's insurance app then manages the whole incident for you. You don't even have to ring a taxi or a tow truck. It's all done through APIs, and you just basically get out of the car, and then everything is done.
Okay. And how would that work for other things outside of that user case? I'm just trying to get my head around this, right? So, would it work if I was contemplating? I get this is sort of hypothetical, but if I was contemplating buying a new car, would effectively the bank be able to sort of question me and go, "Are you sure this is what you really want to buy? Maybe you should look at something else." Or, but given how you commute, or the amount of mileage that you do, or the terrain you drive in, maybe this is a better option, and we can give you financing based on that. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about, or
It's kind of getting there, although I don't think the bank would tell you not to
no?
buy that car. It'd be more like
Yeah, the next one up. Yeah,
you asking the bank you asking the bank what car should I buy, and based on your lifestyle, they would be able to analyze
yeah.
that. But it's really getting into because we're in cloud-based open platforms, and there's an ecosystem with so many players doing so many things. I think what I'm looking at is when banking and fintech starts to integrate with other industries through
Mm.
APIs and bring together new experiences for the customer's life. And we end up with that we don't actually need to think about money because it's done for us in our lifestyle events and day-to-day living. In fact, it's interesting because I often talk about Ant Group in
Yep.
China, who also have Ant International going global. And I do remember the tagline they had. I think they've dropped it now, but it was one from about 5, 6 years ago, which was everything you need for your digital lifestyle. And that's when you think about that, and then super apps, because bearing in mind, Ant Group's a spin-off
Yep.
from Alibaba. They're talking about the full integration of commerce, entertainment, and buying and selling in finance in a super app that means you don't have to think about anything because your whole lifestyle is managed digitally. and intelligently. And I guess that's where I'm
I was
coming
talking to
from.
someone a couple of months ago, actually, on this podcast on the payment side. We're looking at sort of alternative payment methods, and we started talking about Tesla, and he was saying that that there is a way that if you're driving Tesla, then there obviously has to be sort of critical mass on the road. But you said actually, I need to get to my destination a little bit quicker. It can communicate with other Tesla drivers, slow them down, but pay them kind of almost like a surcharge for slowing them down, so you could then get through the traffic. I think that's kind of fintegration. I can't believe I'm saying that word. I hate that word, but that's kind of fintegration, but with a completely different ecosystem. We're not talking about integrating banks with fintechs. We're talking about integrating financial services or banking financial services with other ecosystems. Yeah, I mean that's in essence what we're talking about.
Well, there was one guy, a former Google engineer, who had a vision of self-driving cars creating their own self-driving taxi network that every payment would have a little bit put aside for generating and investing in the next group of cars, and there'd be no human involved except for those who get in the cars to get from A to B. You know, there's kind of this phantasmagorical changes that are going on, and one of the things that is difficult when you're looking at trends and going out there into the
Yeah,
future. And I should say, I'm not a futurist. I'm a commercial strategist. I'm looking for where to invest, and what's going to work. But if you did go into being speculative, I think in 100 years we'll look back at what happened in this century as being a little bit like what we would look back at the 19th century industrial revolution changes were. We didn't live through them, but by way of example, one thing that happened is that Coca-Cola was invented basically to de-stress people because they were getting so stressed out by change.
did not know that.
And in 100 years, well, that's one of the stories. But in 100 years, we'll look back and say this was a massively changing moment of time, and how it plays out will be interesting. I mean, one of the things that was in my latest book before the new one that's coming out was Digital for Good. The whole idea that we can use technology to improve society
Yeah.
and save the planet. And it's really interesting right now because we've got a lot of meetings going on around, I would say, the climate emergency, because that's what a lot of people bang on about. But it's an awful lot of fintech companies that are looking at renewables and carbon offsets and the whole way in which that can be used with technology to do better. And from my side, I don't champion climate change because I'm not so sure whether this is just a cycle of Earth or whether it really is created by humans. But I know what is created by humans is biodiversity destruction, and habitat destruction. We've lost something like 60% of the wildlife on planet Earth in the last 50 years thanks to human activity, and that's what I find quite
Going
disgusting.
back to your point just now, actually, in terms of the pace of change and the rapid pace of change within the sector that we focus in, banking, financial services, fintech, it must be difficult. I mean, you obviously went through that when you're writing this book, halfway through, and then suddenly OpenAI pops out of nowhere. Well, let's say pops out of nowhere. Clearly, it was built, right? But kind of goes into mainstream out literally overnight, and then changes kind of the way that you're looking at things. How difficult is that for you as a commentator and you as an author to a follow those trends and to be kind of be able to pivot and go, actually, I've got a new idea because I've seen this technology. I mean, maybe if we wind the clock back 7 or 8 years and this thing called open banking, right? It wasn't really, I mean, maybe it was longer than 7, 8 years ago, but and then crypto, and then all of these different things that keep coming into the markets. DeFi, I mean, DeFi is relatively new as well, and we still look at all that. And from a commentator, I mean, you're going to end up writing, War and Peace, basically, right? Because you can probably keep going and going and going. How do you know when to stop and when to go? Okay, that's enough in that book. I'm going to save the rest for another sort of 2 years' time.
Well, I mean, when you look at the future, there's four dimensions: political, economic, social, technological. I have no idea about the political and economic stuff because I don't think you can
Yeah,
predict that. That's the reason why we get so many black swans. You know, who who a lot of people did predict there would be a pandemic. There's been many movies made around pandemics before COVID came in, so we knew it's likely that that might happen. And that's the same with technology. That artificial intelligence, I've actually been writing about for too long, about 25 years, because it's been bubbling away and developing over those years, through different iterations. And in fact, it was very interesting because I've seen AI used mainly for fraud management and risk within financial institutions. Going back 6 years ago, I always remember this great headline that JP Morgan was using AI to do the work of 350,000 hours of human legal time in 1 second.
Wow.
And it's checking contract wording. So OpenAI wasn't a surprise, but what it did do is it's moved us to the next generation of artificial intelligence, because most of it before was being used for single function and couldn't pass the Turing test. But we're getting to the stage now that we're going past that. And what's really fascinating, and I think Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, is actually doing a great job because he's turned the company around. But equally, and I don't know whether it's him or one of his team, to spot OpenAI and say, let's buy that and integrate it with Bing. And suddenly they're challenging Google, which that's the bit that you wouldn't have predicted. You would predict that there would be, AI getting to the stage where it's feeling like it's conversational, but you wouldn't have predicted that Microsoft could challenge Google on search.
Absolutely not. No, you thought once that Explorer was dead, and that was kind of the final nail in the coffin. But seems to have resurged as Bing. And I must say, I've got it on my desktop. I never thought I would download Bing, but it's actually a very good browser. Chris, I've diverted a little bit. I just want to bring this back to sort of the opening of this, which was about some of the work that you do in gender diversity. What that means, I think, first of all, in terms of industry, and I speak for myself, it's not about sort of standing up there, burning bras and going, women, women, women. It really is about, for me anyway, giving female leaders, and not just leaders, but females that are coming into the sector, a voice and an opinion, and being able to help them navigate what is traditionally, certainly in this part of the world, a very, very male-dominated environment or sector. How does that differ in Europe? I appreciate I'm from the UK, but I've not lived in the UK or Europe for 15, 16 years. So how have things changed over the last 10 years or so when it comes to diversity? I know there's a lot of work that's done, but has that made an impact? What are you seeing? What sort of work do you do? And then I'm going to come on to some of the things that I think people like you and I had Brett King on the other day as well, and people who have a voice in the sector can do just to help sort of.
Brett who? Sorry, never heard of
some
him.
Australian chap, looks a bit like me. Just slightly whiter.
Oh, there you go.
I'll send you his LinkedIn, Brian.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, sorry.
I mean, diversity is quite intriguing in terms of there are not that many women that are succeeding in tech or finance. It's increased, so that's the good news. But an increase means that someone might say to you, "Oh, there's double the number of CEOs and founders that are female since 2010 in finance and technology." Well, that still means that it's only 10% or thereabouts, which is small. I mean, I've got a lot of female contacts in the industry who are incredibly creative and enthusiastic. And you mentioned the European Women's Payments Network, that Money 2020, for example, a great crowd of people. But this male allies thing that you were talking about, I think what it is there are people championing females in technology and finance. Unfortunately, some people call that Femtech, which my lady colleague said sounds like some sort of thing they have to use every month to control what's going on with their bodies. Um, it's difficult, and the reason it's difficult is that technology is a male-dominated industry because it's full of guys who are engineers by trade, and what we need to do is do a lot more work on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and
Yeah.
math in education of girls who become ladies, obviously. Um, and I think that's where it's been deficient, and that's the reason why there's such a lack of diversity in banking and technology. Because when you think about finance, technology, science, technology, engineering, math, and what is it that girls are encouraged to do when they're growing up at school? Not those subjects, or not enough focus on those subjects. And that's where it fails. I mean, it's really interesting in China again, because do a lot of work in China, that actually it's about 50-50 when you get into the executive team and into the organization. A lot of very successful female executives and chairmen, chair ladies, um, uh, in China, and the reason for that is STEM. They've done those investments over the last quarter of a century, and there's a huge female workforce that are just effective, if not more so, than the male workforce. And I think that's what's been lacking in certainly Europe and America.
I'm surprised that's been lacking in developed markets or developed countries. But as you said, is it the system's there, the curriculum's there, but perhaps there's not enough encouragement for younger girls to get into sort of those subjects, as opposed to, if you're a young boy and it's, you've got to do in engineering, and you can be a programmer and everyone's cool and it's all about gaming. But I think as the new generations are starting to come through, there is a lot more equality around all different subjects. I was at my stepdaughter's award ceremony just this morning, and the amount of guys that were getting, boys that were getting accolades for being in the choir or dancing, and the girls that were being in the cricket teams and in the football teams and in the rugby teams. That there definitely is more, that I can see, more equality. So do you think this is going to sort of naturally improve over time, or do you think there still needs to be a deliberate push in order to make sure that does actually happen?
It is developing over time, and it's getting better slowly. But I do remember going name dropping to Davos, and there was one session because the United Nations has 17 sustainability goals, and one of those is that there will be equality of race and sex. And as I walked up the steps, there was one thing that they put on the steps because they had signs, which was at the current rate, the true equality between men and women will occur around 2245,
2245.
over
Wow.
200 years away.
Wow.
200 years away. And they had a report about it as well, which I picked up, and it's just interesting looking at, it's the whole nature of everything from education, attitude, inclusion, the ability to get opportunity. So many factors involved, and it's not just therefore saying to your stepdaughter, why don't you try a bit more looking at the sciences, chemistry and physics, or going out and playing rugby, which girls do, but actually saying that there needs to be access once you go through schooling to those careers. And I still think that's quite limited for some areas, particularly
Yeah,
finance
and
and
it
tech.
is, and I think I need to be cognizant of the fact that I'm very fortunate, and privileged, and the girls and my other kids go to private schools, and I'm very humbled to be able to sort of give that to them as an opportunity. But there is a massive part of the population, certainly here in Africa, that don't have that sort of luxury, and are still either not being able to go to school, or they have very, very basic schooling. So I think where technology can come in is to be able to enable them, and people at the lower LSM, to have access to different curriculums through different means and different methods. There's some amazing work that's being done in the world of the metaverse, and virtual reality for training. And I think, dare I say, there's one sort of positive that came out from COVID was, there had to be an adaptable way of learning. And I think that's been sort of taken on and has improved quite a few people's, or young kids' opportunities in life. And I think that's a really good thing. But, 200 years to form equality, that's crazy.
And there's also an important point here that ties it back to artificial intelligence, in that the way in which we educate children was built in Victorian era, which is basically put them through like a production line manufacturing things that they need to learn. So we all had to learn historical dates and events. We all had to learn specific aspects of mathematics around division, multiplication, and the core group of subjects. And these days, a lot of the core group of subjects, to be honest, can be done by machines. We don't need number crunchers.
Absolutely.
Machines can number crunch. With OpenAI, we don't need necessarily even people like me to write stuff, except that OpenAI is only as good as the people like me who write stuff, because that's where they get their input from. But the main thing is that if machines are learning, and therefore machines can do all the things that are the number crunching, mechanical, administrative jobs, which they can, and it will go further than that over the next 30 years. What should we teach our children? And I think we should be really nurturing children. And I've got 2 7-year-old twin boys, so I'm very passionate about this. We should be teaching them to be the best they can be, whatever they can be. The emotions, the creativity, the things that are off the radar of a lot of the traditional educational system, because actually a lot of education, going back to the Victorian era view, is trying to put people through a narrow filter until they end up behaving in a very specific way, rather than actually allowing them to explore their own internal view of the world. And I think that the nurturing of kids to explore their internal views of the world will be a game changer.
It stands to reason that the education that kids are getting now, wherever they are they going to are they fit for the jobs of the future? I mean, there's some jobs that we haven't even thought about, right? I mean, whoever knew that a prompt engineer would be a job, 3 years ago? I didn't. Maybe you did.
Yeah,
But
and that's the key thing about that's the key thing about artificial intelligence. So there will be jobs in the future, and I've written various things around this. I call it trainers, maintainers, and explainers. Training the machines, maintaining the machines, and explaining what the machines are doing. And in particular, I think it comes down to teaching children the things that machines cannot learn. So if machines can learn so much, and it's useful to have the basics of English, math, and writing, obviously. So I'm not saying get rid of the basics, but let's encourage ourselves to go out beyond the boundaries of machines. Teach children to learn the things that machines cannot learn.
Of interest, what sort of things would that be?
I knew you were going to ask that. I think a lot of it's to do with relationships and emotions again, emotional intelligence. So if you've got artificial intelligence doing everything that machines can learn, then humans should be doing the things machines cannot learn around relationships and emotions. In finance, I'll give you an example. In that, when I first started working in finance, I was given a bunch of books to read. This was particularly in investment banking, and one of them was Barbarians at the Gate, which is a great book made into a movie with Tom Hanks, and it was all about the takeover by KKR, one of the sort of raiders of the financial markets, and the emotion involved in a hostile acquisition is incredible. And in that instance, you need to have people who can understand the emotions of the founders of the firms that are being acquired, as well as the acquirer, and work with them to make it successful or to break it apart, depending on which camp you're in. And that area, a machine can't deal with that, you know, because it's relationships and emotions. Equally, when you think about mental health, you know, in fact, it intrigued me because there's a report in the USA where doctors were asked about a medical condition, and there's a bunch of questions from the patients, and they had something like 240 responses from the human doctors and one response from an artificial intelligence machine. And the artificial intelligence gave a much more sympathetic and empathetic answer than the doctors, because the doctors are too busy to have the time to spend on the patient. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. In fact, we had this huge debate the other night because I hosted a dinner around using artificial intelligence in fraud management and risk management. And what we ended up with is we're right now in a dual world, which is the machine and the human. And what you end up with in finance, and this is the conclusion of the dinner, is a machine to machine war between the financial machine and the criminal machine. And the way that will play out is, as long as the financial machine can keep up with the criminal machine using all these tools, then we can probably manage it to keep it down to an acceptable level. But the question is, what is an acceptable level of crime and fraud?
I just want to bring you back. At the beginning, we were talking about sort of programmable money, money working sort of for you without you sort of thinking about it. You mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I misheard you, but there would be some sort of emotional around this. Okay, so it would have an emotional element. And then we've just spoken about actually machines can't really be emotional, but actually maybe they can because of the open AI or the AI output for this sort of medical condition. Where do you sit? Do you actually think AI could become emotionally intelligent to a degree, or again, is that a bit more future, sort of futuristic, Chris side?
I mean, there is an emotional quotient in artificial intelligence, but one of the key things for me is when the technology breaks down, the structure we put in place today doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this happens to me quite often on a personal level, but equally on a professional level, I can see it taking place, which is when, for example, a simple example, you're booking a flight and you realize you booked the flight on the wrong day.
Yeah.
What should easily happen is you just click a button and change it after you've made the order to the day you want it. But the structure isn't set up that way. So you end up calling the airline, sitting on the phone for 20 minutes to try and get an answer, speak to a human, and then the human has to do what's a mechanical job.
Yeah.
That really annoys me.
Mm.
It annoys me that when the technology process breaks down, I have to call, and quite often it could be something I could have simply fixed. But in a different context, I send money through faster payments to the wrong account, for example. Can I get that money back? Well, the answer is no, because the machine computer says
Yeah.
no. But I should be able to talk to an artificial intelligence engine or a human or an avatar, I don't care what it is, and sort those things out in a quick and easy manner. And right now we're in this hybrid structure of old analog processes moving to digital process, old last century structures based on buildings and humans moving to software and servers. And that's why I said give it another 50 years. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because I think we will get to the stage, and this is what I mean by intelligent money that's embedded, invisible, and everywhere, is that I could just speak to money. I could just say, sort that out, because I've just messed up the flight booking or the money I was sending, and it would just get done.
I saw a, I think I can mention them. Yeah, I'm not affiliated with them. I saw a video by Temenos, the banking software provider, which was called the Future of Banking, or it was something, banking is me or something. I'll see if I can find the video. And it was really, really cool. I mean, there was some stuff in there you actually looked at and you went, you know what, this is not far fetched. This is simple things like, oh, in 2 days' time, it's your grandmother's birthday. Do you want to send her a package? Here's 3 options that I think she'll like. Oh, yeah, there you go. Click that one. It's done. Finished. It's written a card. It's written everything, and it's sent it. Little things like that, or waking up and going, you had a coffee yesterday. Why don't you try something different today? A little bit healthier. Have a green tea. It was just little things, but it was that kind of the lifestyle element of banking and financial services, but financial services almost being kind of, just as we're seeing with what's happening with banks, certainly in this part of the world, is banks are becoming the infrastructure. Okay, everything else happens on top. So my personal view is you probably won't even see the banks in the future because it's just going to be sort of a technology. I don't know whether you share that or not, but the more sort of oblique the banks become, I think then the more functionality you can have as a consumer.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I talk about invisible banking. But as you were talking that through, it's another subject we always come back to, which is what's the level of personalization that you can provide without being creepy?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's down to the permissions of the customer as to how much data you can use and in what way. And at the moment, we've seen a number of examples where companies using data actually mess things up. The favorite example was when an American company mailed a young lady and said, "Congratulations on your pregnancy." And when her father saw the letter, he went ballistic because he wasn't aware she was pregnant. And that was using data based on her shopping habits. So it's kind of like, there's a balance. And most people would be happy to give their data if they get something back, which is convenience, rewards, and more. But that balance between data privacy and data access is going to be really interesting. Right now, what a lot of people are saying is over the next few years, we need to break the monopolistic positions of the big tech companies. I've no idea how we'll do that, but there's a lot of people wanting to break the monopolistic big tech grip on the network. And Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of www, is one of the most forthright speakers in that area. He's got a company called Solid, and the whole idea is to decentralize the internet so it's owned individually by you in your area, and you only give access to your data on a permissions basis when it's needed, and not all of your data. So no one can ever see your complete identity details. They can just see the little bit that they need to authenticate. Yes, it really is Darren. It really is Chris.
That makes sense. I think there's a lot of. I was talking to one of the big telcos here a few weeks ago, and they were talking about the super app and having all this data and being able to use all this data. And I think the first question was, hang on a minute, if you're talking to an average consumer on the street and they're going, hang on a minute, how much do you know about me? I didn't tell you could have all that information. And I think that there needs to be that sort of leveling of the playing field. And I think that's where Web3 comes in, right? I'm no expert on Web3. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But the whole idea of you owning your data, you owning your identity, and you being able to share what you deem shareable to third parties, whether that be a Google or a Facebook or Meta or a bank or a Fintech.
Yeah. Sorry, I was distracted because someone just came to the door. I mean, going back to what I was saying before about integrating different industries through technology with data, and then applying intelligence, we could actually bring together, life sciences, medical technologies with farming, agricultural technologies, with government registration technologies, with financial industry technologies, with airline technologies, all of them sharing data in an open platform system. And if, as a user, as a customer, as a human, you felt that was useful to have that data shared between those organizations because you get benefits back, then that's fine. But I think a lot of people are quite fearful about the liberal sharing of data. And a good example for me is the term open banking, because as a general person on the street, that sounds terrible. That means you're going to give my data away to someone else and I'm going to be insecure and they're going to get to hack my account. I'd much rather say it was called better banking and say, no, we're going to give you better service, better experience, better benefits in your digital lifestyle, financial management than you get today. And so the terminology needs to be discussed in depth. It's like I hate the term embedded payments, embedded finance. I'm using it, but I use it in the way of saying it's an inside out view from the industry to the customer. Whereas if I talk about invisible better banking, then that's an outside in view, because what I'm saying is you're not going to have to think about banking and your account. We'll manage it for you digitally, and for you the benefit is that therefore you don't have to worry about money anymore because money thinks for you. And
Chris,
it needs to be from the customer
Chris,
view.
I've got a big grin on my face. For those that are listening on Spotify or Apple or something else, I'm sitting here with a great big grin because if you've been following Talking Success and some of the other podcasts I've done throughout the year, I've been harping on about the fact that open banking, the term, is an absolute oxymoron, because you go up to anyone, any child, and you go, draw me a picture of a bank. And they draw a bank and they draw a safe and they go, this is a bank, right? At least that's how I would draw a bank. You're then going, hey, it's open. They're going, it's what? So, Chris, I haven't stolen this from you before you trademark it. It has been something I've been harping on about for the last 6 months, but I'm with you on that. I think open banking is a terrible term, absolutely terrible term. Chris,
I mean, another term I hate
yeah,
is channel, and
channel.
people still continually harp on about omni-channel. And for 15 years, I've been saying it's a last century word. It's like saying tape. Are you going to tape record the show tonight? Are you? To me, that's what that the word channel is the same as tape. We don't use tape anymore. We're streaming everything. And equally, the reason I hate the word channel is it relates to traditional heritage systems, as I call them, splattered with new technologies that actually disguise the fact that at the back is still this heritage system. And one of my other favorite terms when I'm presenting is to talk about Frankenstein's monster being renamed Bankenstein's monster, because the banks have this monster in their back office, which is fragmented line of business systems that are not integrated, and they're actually typically 30, 40 or 50 years old, and they're dead, and they're stitched together and made to look nice by putting a smart suit on them called the bank app.
I'll tell you another term I see all the time, and it's in contracts, is, we'll send you this by email, by first class post, or by fax email. By what? This is from software companies going,
Yeah.
one of my colleagues a couple of years came up to me, what's this? Oh, and,
Well,
yeah, don't worry about it.
yeah, I mean, I still see forms asking for your telex machine details, which is ridiculous. Fax machines, as
Yeah.
you say, ridiculous. But equally, in today's age, if we're going to be woke, then why is it that I'd get a drop-down form that asks me if I'm Mr., Mrs., or Miss, or Doctor, or whatever, and doesn't say she, him, they, her? I just don't understand. Well, I do understand. It's because of these Bankenstein dead systems that can't keep up with society's
Well, it's
changes.
very easy to fix that. Just make it a free text field. Surely that would be easy, right? I'd imagine you get some interesting responses, but it's just made it free text. Hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris, listen, I'm conscious of your time. Before we wrap up, I know you've got a new book coming out, mid part of next year. You've got a series of other books, and I think anyone that is interested in the world of banking, digital transformation, AI, fintech, what's going on across the world, not just from a European lens, I'd encourage you, A, to sort of pop onto Chris's site, which I will put on the links below, and have a look around. But please also subscribe to his newsletter. It's daily. I get them every single day. They're also on LinkedIn as well. Follow Chris. You can't tag Chris on LinkedIn because he doesn't like that. So don't try and tag him because you won't be able to. Yeah, don't drop him a message because he's a busy man. But do give him a follow. Do subscribe to his newsletter. As I said at the beginning, Chris doesn't just regurgitate content that's being pushed out there. He commentates on it. Okay, so he gives his view and his ideas behind and his commentary behind some of the topical things that are coming out. I read one it was yesterday, I think, on future of banking, what that's going to look like. I think there was sort of 4 key bullet points, and I think you laid most of them to rest in terms of actually, no, I think it's going to be these 4 rather than those 4. So please do give Chris a follow. Chris, is there any last words? Have I missed anything? Is there anything else or anywhere else I should be pointing people toward? Or...
Don't forget Captain Cake and the Candy Crew. Captain Cake and the Candy Crew, books for kids to learn very quickly about diversity and friendship and teamwork. And it's really fun. It's basically Captain Cake is a Victoria sponge cake who comes to life for various reasons and has a crew of the Lieutenant Chocolate, Sergeant Jelly, and Private Potato. But she's a sweet potato. Okay. Just to be clear, Private Potato actually is the only reason why the Candy Crew's rocket ship can keep flying through space. So CaptainCake.com. It's for kids about between the age of 3 to 7.
All right, thank you. I'll also include that link down there. So do have a look. Chris, listen, I just want to say thank you so much, and to your team as well for facilitating this. I know you're a busy man, and I really value your time. And as I said at the beginning, I'm a big fan. I can stop blushing now and go and have a cold drink. So listen, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere on the planet again at some point in the future. Cheers.